What's up, nurses? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Kati, Kleber, your host. And before we get into the episode today, I really wanted to bring things back to why I'm doing this all in the first place. Within the first 2 years of someone leaving nursing school, a large percentage of nurses leave the profession in general. We talk about a nursing shortage, and yes, we don't have enough nurses, but there's also a lot of people who have graduated from nursing school, passed their NCLEX, and even gotten their license, and have been like, I'm not doing this. This is too difficult, or not what I wanted to do. And I'm 100% get that. I had such a shell shock experience as a new grad years ago, and that has only continued for people who have graduated since I did years ago. And I created this platform to really support those of you transitioning to practice, to make it so instead of, a third of nurses leaving within the first couple of years, we can bring that down significantly with the right kind of support and changing our approach from the way that we're educated in nursing school to optimizing our expertise for a highly specified role. Even something like med-surg, that is a more of a general position, we can get hyper focused on the needs and knowledge necessary for a med-surg nurse to be successful. So that's why I created this whole thing. And one of the reasons that, I was thinking about this the other day, how much time I spent on my degree and how much money. So it took me 5 years. I graduated high school in 2005 and I graduated from college in 2010 with my bachelor's in nursing. I added up roughly how much that cost. $85K. $85K for this piece of paper that enabled me to get my nursing license. If you translate it to today, that's $120 roughly. And that's from a private school. I went JUCO at the beginning, and then I finished, because I did play basketball, but I finished at this small private school. And yeah, you're spending $120 these days on a BSN. And to have gone through that, not only all that money, but all that time and energy learning this, to not use it is just grieves my heart, people. I think we can fix that, because there are so many people who really enjoy nursing, but the aspect of doing it at the bedside is just unattainable. The expectations are different. The learning curve is crazy. We're not prepared for it. And so that's why I have created all of the content that I have to help decrease that. I mean, that's the mission of Fresh RN, is to really decrease nursing turnover. And so I really, for those of you who are newer to this platform, highly encourage you to check out a ton of free resources. I have a pretty large blog. I have a great email list where we send out tips and tricks weekly, and you can sign up for that in the description of this episode, because we want you to be supported as you go through nursing school. And as you go through nursing school, and you're mainly your first few years at the bedside, we have experienced nurses even reaching out saying, hey, I really appreciate what you've done and said, because it's helped me do X, Y, and Z. So I wanted to read a few things that people have reached out and told me over the years. So Leah Balderson said, Dear Kati, I just finished reading your weekly pearls on the pathway to becoming the best. I was so impressed to read such an honest interpretation of what true achievement in nursing really is. Too often I watch new grads become disillusioned with nursing as a whole because of the terrible amount of stress that they place on themselves attempting to be the best. The truth is, and it always has been, that the best in nursing is the path that the person who has developed their craft to the point where they can smile, still be excited about going to work, and tell everyone that they love what they do. Bar none, period, end of story. Doesn't matter what initials you have behind your name or what areas of healthcare you work in, but rather how much we can tell the world we are proud of being called a nurse. I thought that was great. You don't have to work in a specific area. You just have to enjoy your work. And I want to be able to help people do that, because I think you can do that in the ICU. You can do that in med-surg. You can do that in inpatient care. But I want to be able to help transition from school to those roles in a way that is doable, conquerable, and that you feel awesome about. So thank you, Leah. So she's subscribed to the email list. So highly encourage you guys to get on the email list. And for those of you who are interested in doing something non-hospital based, I have a great resource that I'm going to put a link in the description with my friend. She's a nurse, Kelsey, and she helps people navigate and really craft their dream career. She's got a ton of free resources, paid ones too, but her expertise is so valuable. So that is another option. And even if you do work in the hospital, some creative ways to optimize. Maybe you work PRN at one hospital and part-time at another one, and like those kind of things. There's just so many great things you can do with the degree. So then I also have an email from Joy. She said, I found your last email on moving from the ICU to med surg really helpful. I've been on a similar career path, and it helped me feel more validated and like I'm not the only one, and I'm not failing for working in ICU for a couple of years, then switching to a telemetry unit. Thanks for this. I talk about that in one of my emails about how I made that decision because it holistically made the best sense for my life at the time. And it's not all about going from highest acuity, you know, that's the only career path you can take. And I have gotten a lot of feedback that email has been really helpful. And finally, Jennifer said, this is a positive, uplifting, and informative page. I find that although I'm a well-seasoned nurse, this page is really relevant. It creates an environment to remember to help new nurses and build them up to be as awesome as we were after being in the field for many years. So thank you, Jennifer. So that's just some of the feedback we've gotten for our email list. I just highly recommend you guys getting on it so you can get some of these tips and tricks and insights from the bedside. They'll go straight to your inbox every week. So let's get into the episode. All right, guys, as promised, here is a letter from a reader that I thought was going to be a helpful thing. So I'm not going to share names. I'm going to change a couple little details. So this is, we're going to say Sarah. Sarah says, hi, I'm a new charge nurse on a busy med-surg floor. I have been a nurse for 19 years, and I've worked in various positions on both med-surg clinics, and I even taught nursing for a little while. I listened to your podcast about being a charge nurse, and it was really helpful and insightful. I wanted to ask further about managing a floor with CNAs and RNs who don't necessarily get along, or they do a lot of gossiping. Our manager is new and doesn't seem to be handling the issues quite well. As a charge nurse, I feel some level of responsibility to manage not only the flow of the floor, but the chaos of the personalities, if you will. Do you have any suggestions? Again, I'm going from a bedside nurse to charge nurse overnight, essentially. I still want to be seen as their peer, but also show that I can supervise and collaborate for change. What a wonderful question. And this is kind of common, guys. Like, nursing units. It's not like we work in silos and just come in and put information on a spreadsheet and then leave. We all are working together throughout an entire shift. So managing different personalities can be quite challenging. I do get into this more specifically in my charge nurse course. I'll put a link to that in the description, and I will put a link to the podcast episode she mentioned. And for those of you, maybe you're not ready for a charge nurse role yet, or you have no desire to do it, I still recommend listening to that episode and this one as well, because while you might not be in that role, it is helpful to understand your charge nurse and what kind of responsibilities that they're coping with or dealing with throughout a shift. And it can make your relationship with them and your understanding of the unit a bit better, to have that additional context. So for this person in particular, I did mention whoa, you've got great experience, like a lot of experience. And I'm sure there are a lot of other nurses on the unit who don't have that kind of experience. Shoot, just that many years as a nurse plus experience in a clinic plus education. Hello. I'm wondering if Sarah here has, if you hear that another person has that much experience and you're brand new, you're just like, whoa, I default to you. Like you're very, you've got, what you're doing kind of thing. So part of charge nurse roles is, and stepping into them is like acknowledging yeah, I actually do bring something to the table. I'm not this meek person who's like, oh, please, please, dear God, follow what I say. You actually have authority in that space. And I recently had an episode on commanding authority on my YouTube channel. I will put the link to that in the description of this episode too. And that is someone who has gained and earned authority in a space. So I think part of it is being aware of that and knowing that you have authority. Now, when you have these challenging personalities, it's not like you're going to have this sit down conversation and say, "Hey, I need you guys to stop gossiping." Like, that's not how real humans work. Like, that's how it looks in a textbook to say, "Hey, let's have a CE on about how we're not going to be bullies." Like, okay, I can do an online course and I can check off a thing. That doesn't mean it's going to change what I'm doing. This is going to be much more subtle and done, through small actions during a shift. Okay. So let's talk about some very practical things. The first thing is have a realistic goal. Some people get into that charge nurse role and they want everyone to love them. And I understand that entirely. If you are a people pleaser, I'm sure that might be a subconscious goal, is the way that I know I'm doing well is everybody likes me. This is where I like to differentiate between being friends with everybody and being friendly. Okay? Big difference between those two things. I'm going to be friendly to everybody. But this isn't like hangout session with my friends where we support one another and like hang out and have fun. I'm like here in my professional capacity. Okay? And for some of us and I think this is common in nursing, where you say nursing is like who I am, and nursing school is so all encompassing. It can be really easy to allow nursing to be your personality, your entire personality. And so when you go to work, like it's like you don't have a different side, like you don't have a professional persona. Like I'm not the same. I don't act the same at home with my kids and my husband as I would working at the bedside, or at home with friends versus at the bedside. Even if I get along really well with my colleagues, even if I feel like we vibe awesome, I'm not going to like open up entirely to these people because this is a professional setting. And there's also just things I'm not going to do and say. But there is a line that needs to be drawn, and I find that not everybody does that, and not everybody maintains or realizes the separation between my professional persona and my professional side that I exemplify when I'm at work, and my normal life persona, if that makes sense. This is why, like, we're not just normal members of society. We're held to a different expectation because we hold a professional license. Okay. And I notice that the challenge can come in from a charge nurse perspective when you're working with various people who have different understandings of that professional persona. So when we're talking about people who are gossiping a lot and like acting crazy at work, it's like they don't know necessarily, hey, we need to just act different here. Like we're at grandma's house and we're not acting crazy and saying everything that comes to mind or venting frustrations and whatnot. So, from the charge nurse perspective, my advice is really to maintain a friendly demeanor, but also don't judge yourself on whether everyone wants to be your best friend. It's also like a coach. Like if you're the head coach of a team, which I often compare nursing to, you're the charge nurse, and you're not necessarily best friends with the charge nurse or with the coach, but a good coach is going to lead you well, meaning you know what's expected of you, have an idea of what's coming, you're prepared, and the coach comes and helps you out and answers questions and supports you. But they don't sit there and like gossip about how they cannot believe that this player was doing this or made this move or made this decision. Like, what an idiot, right? Like, that's not a respectable coach. So the charge nurse needs to embody what they expect other people to be. So that means you're not gossiping and you're not eye rolling the new person or whatever. You're gonna have this and it's not as fun, right? You can't act crazy. You can't be like as loose as you would like to be at home when you're with your friends. But it is the difference between the locker room talk where the coach isn't there and then pulling it, and then, okay, we've got a coach here. We need to have a certain level of a certain demeanor that's appropriate in the professional setting. So, and for a charge nurse, it is really helpful to clock personalities and know that not everybody is going to be the same. Yes, there is a similar expectation, like you're going to perform your job appropriately and act appropriately, but you're going to notice which nurses are very timid and mousy and like almost ask for permission to just exist versus the bulldozers or the um, people who need to like chill out or more, or the passive aggressive people. Like I want you as the charge nurse to really notice these personalities and know that they're going to take different like approaches. Like saying one thing to one person might not fly with another one. And my advice is when you have people who are engaging in gossip or like this is not appropriate, is to tactfully shut it down. And that doesn't mean, hey, this is inappropriate, please stop talking about this. This is like, hey, all right, let's chill out on that right now. Let's talk about, or hey, and then change the subject. So I find quickly changing the subject is really, really helpful in those when you observe that kind of thing going on, or like, and or kind of making it into a joke, like, man, I hope nobody's talking about me like this when I'm not here, or something like that. Or man, I wonder what y'all say about blah blah blah. Like that's not cool. Can we not do that? Like I would love to if we just did not do that. Okay, those kind of things. And then if someone is trying to gossip with you, really not engage with it, and then you're no fun to talk to about that kind of stuff. But I do think having this business-like professional persona and being comfortable with that and knowing like, hey, sometimes I can get a little casual, but for the most part, like, yeah, this is work. You know what I mean? Is and makes slipping into being or embodying that much easier. Okay. So have a goal of running a tight ship, meaning, you're going to touch base with everybody at the beginning of this shift and they know what to expect from you. Hey, here's what's going on. Mark, you're up for the first admission. Here, you do this, and this is like, I've seen the mistake of charge nurses not wanting to make the tough decisions because they don't want to get blamed for things. Like I've seen the charge nurse be like, all right, who wants the next admission? Don't do that. Please don't do that. Like that is, like you don't want my shoulder here. My like not wanting, how do I want to say this? You don't want to take responsibility for like telling someone who maybe doesn't love it that they're going to have the next admission. But just like, okay, you discharged a person and now you have, space, you're the next person, or this, these other people got 3 admissions, you're next in line. Like this is just what it is. The goal isn't to get through the shift with the least amount of work possible, right? If you're a good charge nurse, you're going to help them make work very doable. Okay. That means when that admission comes in, you're going to help them get them settled. You're going to see what you can do to make it so that their workload is doable, because they do have that kind of support, especially the newer people who don't have a great flow quite yet. So really running that tight ship and like enabling, you just make it so your colleagues know that it's going to be fair. They don't have to watch the assignment to make sure that you're giving your best friend the easiest day possible and you're unloading it on the people who aren't going to push back. When people don't have to worry about that kind of stuff and they know you're going to be fair, they know, you're going to just be reliable and predictable, that makes people relax. And I do encourage people to start off their shift with a little huddle, even if your unit doesn't usually do that, because when people can start like feel like they're part of a team, they perform better, So, and especially if you are highly experienced and you're working with a bunch of new grads who are still like figuring things out, you can start your shift with, all right, here's the deal for the unit. We got a couple patients that are fall risks, like major fall risks. So if you hear the bed light or the call alarm for X room, somebody run. Okay. So that we can make sure that they're not falling or whatever. And this person's not doing so well. So, hey, Sarah, if that person continues to tank, make sure you chat with whomever to help cover your other patients, and I can help you when they're not doing well. Like that kind of thing, so that people know, hey, we are part of a team. Like we're going to get through this shift together, and I'm going to help you, and you're going to help other people, and that's going to make this shift go really well. And it doesn't take this like massive, big leadership presence, but it can just take some proactive checking on starting off with a good huddle, proactively checking on people, and helping out where you can, and having a plan for when things go poorly, and taking like initiative and things like that, so that people can trust you. Do not be that charge nurse who just sits at the desks and waits for people to need something, and you know checks their email and is literally sitting there doing the minimum amount of work. Like people just very much dislike that. But that kind of framework can really set it up so that you do deal with less crazy personalities, because they know they're going to get called out on it, and that is not cool, not appropriate. And when people are part of part of a team for a shift, like they just generally perform better. So I think having that framework is really helpful and can reduce the amount of shenanigans, and then just gentle pushbacks on shenanigans. And if you are making like the um, assignment, and hey, when these two nurses are together, they are super not cool. Do whatever you can to keep them put them on the other side of the unit if it makes no difference in terms of patient care. Like uh, people can get kind of buddy and like not cool, and sometimes it's just impractical for them to be right next to each other the whole time, and it can make the shift easier for people. So when you can learn personalities and can make personnel assignments based on like how to optimize the team, that's like just good coaching. Okay. And being comfortable with being friendly but not being BFFs with everybody, I think that those lines are really important to have. So what do you guys think? How do you handle, if you're a charge nurse, how do you handle people with challenging personalities? Again, I go way in depth in this in the charge nurse course, but I'd love to hear what other people do. Or if you are someone who works on a unit and you have a couple good charge nurses who handle this really well, I would love to hear your experience, your perspective, when you've seen things that did not go well, and when you saw things that did go well. So leave some comments, send me an email, contact@freshrn.com. Let me know what you think. Don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe. That's just a super free, easy way to support my podcast and our efforts here. So I just thank you guys so much for your engagement and your time. Please share this episode with people that you think might enjoy it or find it useful. And just thank you guys. Stay fresh.